Iowa.
From high school to international wrestling, on the mat and beyond, this is the Potentially Dangerous Podcast with the guys from IA Russell.
If you're a fighter, you like a fight. If you're an American, you like a fight. If you're an Iowa Hawkeye, you know you're going to get a fight.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and all your podcast-friendly apps. And follow us on social media platforms at IA Russell. Time to strap it up and get to the show. Welcome back to Potentially Dangerous, episode 123 with Ross, Bartachek, Tony Hager here. We've got some UNI news, huh? Man, we've been just hammering Iowa State and Iowa since we've been back, and there's finally some news in Cedar Falls. So, obviously the commitment, we got a schedule, we got an update on Rudy Yates. We're also going to talk about Drake wrestling on the show today. A little bit, some nuggets from the girls wrestling. We talked quite a bit about that last episode, but I got a couple nuggets here that I didn't have on the last show that I think are important. And then classifications are out, so we're gonna try to get to all that here in this episode. But Ross, let's get to UNI. It's good to see some news from up north here.
I just cracked a Mountain Dew in victory and support of Schwab. So
that looks good. I haven't had a Mountain Dew since probably we're at West Gym.
Yeah, well, UNI podcast calls for a nice cold dew. That's what I was thinking today. So I'm happy to talk about Panther Train.
Yeah, so they got number 3, top 100 recruit. Lightweight got a little bit of depth there. So that was, what is overall, consensus, I guess. What are your thoughts on them landing that? I didn't know, who some of their targets were. Obviously the Georgia pipeline is still pretty good there.
Yeah, it was, it took me by surprise. I think probably a couple other people obviously Georgia's been producing some pretty good guys. And a lot of those guys have gone through UNI. Joey Laser still competing on the senior circuit. Taylor Lujan's a really big cog in the lineup right now. Jake Hodges has gone through, and now Kyle Goldhofer is the next Georgia guy to come through. And obviously that relationship with Lee Roper is just paying dividends. I think is a big reason that Lujan looked at UNI, and now they got another guy that's projected at 125. Right now UNI's got 7 people on the roster listed at 125.
Wow.
So, I was a little surprised to see Gable Fox. He wrestled 38, didn't he? 138 his senior year.
He was bigger.
Yeah, and he's listed at 25. Obviously, Biscaglia, Drew Bennett was at 125, which that's not really big surprise that he's down at 25. He wrestled 26 for Dapper Dan. But yeah, they have a lot of guys there, but I think a lot of them are going to probably outgrow it here in 2 years. So it's not a bad idea to go snag another top 100 guy at that weight.
Well, and they've had a couple weight classes. That have had a bunch of kids at that weight class, right? They kind of it's weird, they've had one person is the guy at this weight class, and then they've got other weight classes that are just loaded, there's no room for them to go. So, when you put out that post, 157, there's some people coming down. They've got some bodies there now. So that was I think positive for UNI fans to see that those guys are coming down.
Yeah, obviously, Logan Ryan and Peyton Moore were the 2 guys at 57 last year. And I can't remember if it was it you that got that scoop that, Steyer was officially redshirting? I can't remember how
that all came out, to be honest with you.
But I kind of remember you down there talking to him about it. Anyway, that was kind of we knew obviously it was on the table for him to redshirt, but it kind of still was okay, well, he's taking it now. And I think Isaiah Patton and Kelly were thinking about going to 57 last year, but then the Steyer situation came up, so they stayed up at 65. But now with Steyer back in the lineup full time, they're going to have 4 guys vying for that 157 spot. That's just going to make it so the toughest guy, he's got to bring his A game every day, that competition pushing you to make you better. So hopefully we see, 157 emerge for UNI this year. obviously, I don't know if we kind of blew past this with the lightweight depth, but they kind of lost a former top 50 recruit. I can't remember where, but Rudy Yates is no longer listed on the roster.
I just figured he was part of that 157.
He's on the way up, man.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, he's not listed on the roster. I think we've kind of heard rumblings that he wasn't, going to be on the team anymore. So, I mean, just kind of a couple changes there at the lightweights for what you thought the future was. And, I don't know, just kind of a interesting turn there in Cedar Falls.
Yeah, I don't think, Yates just, from what I was told, just couldn't keep the weight down, and we've heard that he hasn't been on the team, but no one really ever confirmed with it, and now he's poof, gone like a fart in the wind, and no one's like really even talking about it. So, I mean, it just seemed like it happened 6 months ago, but
right,
he's obviously not on the roster anymore. Not even sure where he's at, but maybe that's a headache that they didn't want anymore. So, but you never know. I have no idea. But they've obviously got lots of local talent here from Iowa that are going to be manning those spots in the lower weights. That's what it has me excited about the UNI team, is just those guys that we covered for so long, that could maybe, start cracking that lineup. I'm pumped to see Lara. 41. I think if he's cutting down to 41, he's got to be just cut. So I'll be interested to see how he is improving. But UNI, I think UNI is some of these guys are gonna surprise some people. But the schedule came out. They're going back to Midlands, where I think that's where they need to be. Obviously, the Southern Scuffle is where they've gone the last 2 years. Is that right?
Yep, I think so. 2 years.
So yeah, they're back at the Midlands. But anything else that stuck out to you on the schedule?
Before I get more specific, just kind of overarching, like you said, they're going to the Midlands, but they kept Cliff Keen Las Vegas, which, I mean, it's kind of funny how it was like, the Midlands was the tournament to go to, and then it became the Southern Scuffle, and now it's like everybody wants to go to Cliff Keen. So I think it's interesting that UNI is keeping Cliff Keen on there with the Midlands. That's traveling to Las Vegas is probably kind of pretty expensive, so it's good to see that still on there. I think they have 5 home duels, plus the home event of UNI Open. The big duels at home are going to be Cornell, Oklahoma, and Iowa State, and they got in my opinion, just looking at the surface, they got a really tough away slate. It kind of looks like.
Dude, Vegas is cheap. I go out. Where are you staying when you go to Vegas?
I guess I'd never gone out, but I didn't think it was cheap to travel a team out there.
Flying anywhere is expensive, but you can get out to Vegas for like $60.
All right, I suppose.
But if you're going out to eat and stuff, that's where they get you. You're losing money. There's some cheap hotels out there, but it depends on if they're splashing. It can definitely be expensive. But people always think Vegas is so expensive, but it is to eat and drink, and not probably what the wrestlers are doing. So
probably not.
Anyways, the schedule. I guess the thing that just stuck out to me was they're going back to Midlands.
Cornell's coming though. I don't know what day 12/16 is. I haven't looked at a calendar, but I was like, ooh, that looks like that could be a really fun duel in West Gym. What day is I gotta look it up now. I felt like, go ahead.
No, the 12th, the 16th, the 16th.
16th.
The 16th.
Sunday? I think I saw it was at 2:00, so it kind of seems like a Sunday duel time.
What's with all these Friday and Sunday duels?
Who knows?
That's all Iowa. How are people supposed to fly in and come to these duels if they're not on Saturdays? I just don't get it. But anyways.
So, but, I think that's a potential. You got West Gym. You got Steyert back. You got a lot of virtually everyone on UNI's last year's squad returns, but they're adding Steyert. I'm trying to think what match was I really looking at. 157 could be Logan Ryan versus Freddie Stroker, a couple Bettendorf Bulldogs going at it. There's some really good matchups. Obviously, Taylor Lujan, Brandon Womack. Lujan got the win last year in the duel, but there are a couple top 10 guys. Drew Foster, Max Dean. That was a good series last year. I think it went 2-1 to Max Dean, but, Foster got a really big win. The one time he did get him, Jacob Holschlag pinned Ben Darmstadt at 197. So that's a good matchup. So, I mean, it's just, I feel like that's probably must-see duel, just overall.
Yeah, it'll be packed.
Just not for you and I. So, and they got a couple other big duels. I think they got, Nebraska on the road. That'll probably be a pretty fun one. And then Iowa State at home again. I think they were at Iowa State came in last year too, but, that should be in-state rivalries. It's always good to see that. So, I mean, I like UNI's what they got for home schedule.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about the schedule. I didn't like Iowa's, but this one has some interesting teams like Cornell coming in, right? I mean, outside of their conference with Nebraska coming in. Obviously, Iowa State at West Gym is always good. Good to see those in-state rivals. We don't get to see UNI wrestle Iowa. It's been beaten to a dead horse, obviously, of why they're not wrestling. But one thing I wanted to know here on UNI is every single time a kid commits to UNI, I always just feel like we get the kind of the same response from the kids. It's always like, a family feel, Kyle said it reminds me a lot of how my dad raised my sister and I. Just the coaching staff just makes you feel like you're not just going there to wrestle. It's for, this is your whole life. We're going to try to teach you to be citizens out of this. So I think that's just something that I'm just continuing to see from recruits from UNI. So that's obviously what they're bringing home, obviously, up in Cedar Falls. But anything else on UNI for right now, anyways?
The last thing I'll say is props to Doug Schwab. They joined this Big 12 conference, and I don't know. I just think it's really, they want that duel with Oklahoma State, so they're willing to travel down to Stillwater. They're not getting a home and home for it. I think it's the same situation with South Dakota State. I think they got to go back to Brookings again. But kudos for him. Like, they want that duel, and they're willing to go on the road if that's the way they're going to get it. So I'm just really, impressed with Schwab's willingness to go out and get whoever he can and wrestle these great matches.
So we're talking about in-state too. We didn't talk about this last week, right? Drake?
No, that's what I was going to say. So, I mean, you just kind of like nonchalantly break some news, and we just totally blew by it last podcast.
Yeah,
So Drake Wrestling, you're just hosting, Takedown Radio like you do, and then you just find out that Drake's looking to start a program. I mean, what you got to tell us what we know.
Well, just what I know is there's been meetings and presentations that have been at Drake, with the president and other board members. I've seen the presentation. The NWCA puts this nice little booklet together of why they should add wrestling, what's the potential of revenue from off of as far as events go, the enrollment numbers as far as how they can go up. Drake is really hurting right now for enrollment numbers. They're sitting around 1,400. So adding men's and women's wrestling to the Drake would be very attractive, right? So I think I would be shocked if Drake doesn't do it, but it's obviously a financial situation where they've got to know that return is going to come with that enrollment in order to put the money into it with the coaches and whatnot. But the NWCA says they're going to pay for 2 new wrestling mats, all new singlets and gear. So really their only overhead will be coaches, and it says they'll be on a national search for who would want the job. A couple coaches have already reached out to me saying, if you hear anything this is going to be a go, put my resume at the top of the list. I'm I'm not the guy, this is just conversation that I've heard, I guess. So I'm not the one actually sitting down and talking with Drake, but all good news, right? I mean, I think the location would be great, easy to fly in. Obviously, we've seen what it's done for Grandview's program. I mean, they're just killing it, right? So it's working for them.
I mean, obviously, yeah, it's Grandview benefiting, and I think another part of that is, the location of central Iowa, and I don't think it's a big secret that, especially in the big class, Fort Dodge, Waukee, I'm not listing every school in that area, but you kind of get where I'm going, that there's a lot of big names that have come out of that area of Iowa, and you just kind of think if maybe, you keep them from leaving the state, like your Henry Pullmeyer, Zach Price, Zach Barnes left the state. I mean, these guys that are in central Iowa now, maybe they would have looked at another Division I option in their backyard if they could have. So I think there's a lot of good reasons, and it's a really fertile recruiting ground for them to pull from.
And obviously, alumni from Drake, there's no shortage of money from there. There's a lot of wealthy people that went to Drake. And then Iowa State recognizes former Drake wrestlers on one of their duels last year and brought in a ton of crowd, a huge crowd. So the alumni support would be there. But obviously, starting a new program, it can't be an easy decision. But with the success that some of these other schools are having, D1 level is a whole nother animal. But I think with maybe a big donor and with the help with NWCA, who they're able to bring in, it makes sense. I mean, from the numbers that I've seen, it makes sense on paper. But I think their biggest hurdle is, do they have to build new facilities or not? From what I was told, there is a location that they could practice in. There have to be some updates in it to put padding on the wall, but it could be turned into a wrestling facility pretty easy. But I think you gotta do men's and women's if you're gonna do it.
Well, I mean, obviously that's kind of something we spent a lot of time talking about last week, is how important, adding a women's component to the high school. So, I don't think you're far off on there. So yeah, I mean, obviously it would be a really good move for Drake to add both.
Yeah, it's like really early in the process. So like they haven't been having board meetings on it. Just a presentation has been presented to Drake. So it's really early in the process. I mean, I think just being able to get the meeting is considering that they might add wrestling. So just to get a meeting in front of somebody like that is just not easy to do, right? So I think that's positive direction. I think it'd have a huge aspect, like you said, some of these central Iowa kids that wouldn't maybe go out of state if they had that option. And it just gives another D1 program to maybe, have some more in-state rivalries. On the topic of girls wrestling, so we got on that last week, right, a little bit, kind of about the meeting. If you missed that, go back to our last podcast. There was a agenda item at the Iowa Girls Association about sanctioning women's wrestling, and we're a long ways away. We are the only state with a boys and girls association, so we're seeing all these states come out with sanctioning of a state tournament, and we can't do that because the boys, the boys aren't going to just have a tournament for girls if the sport's not sanctioned, from what I've been told. They can't just sanction a tournament is what, the Iowa girls are saying, but it's just kind of like a political nightmare right now, and it's really sad that we're the only state that has this problem. But last week I said there was 24 people that supported this idea to add women's wrestling. But they're way up. Out of 290 schools with wrestling, 170 were in support for adding wrestling. 96 athletic directors, 94 coaches, and 3 legislators. That's a hell of a number.
That seems like a lot of support.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be interested to know who didn't, respond to it and say some positive things about it, about wanting the need to add it or something like that. But
I mean, just you have over half, and that it's not that. It's not that they didn't. The other people in that email didn't say no. They just didn't, didn't support it, I guess. So I actually have the list of people that were in favor of it. I mean, the number is really long, obviously, but I mean, it is kind of interesting to see specific names on here of who is in support of it or who responded back to it. I don't want to call anybody out, so I won't give specific names, but I mean, what's kind of sad about it is some of our bigger name coaches didn't participate in it, or maybe they didn't get the emails. You know, you're going to see you see a lot of like 1A and 2A coaches on here and 3A schools, particularly in the CIMA. You know, not a lot of response from all of them, which was kind of weird to see. It's not surprising. I mean, we put out information on the Fairway Dan Gable Wrestler of the Year Awards, and we didn't get a lot of support from CIML. One of the toughest conferences in high school wrestling, and we can't get support from them, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, there's just so many reasons to add girls wrestling. Once you get to the round from 106 to 152, there is 7 or more girls that were listed last year. Now, there was only 1 girl at 160, there's 5 girls at 82, and then 2 or 3 girls from 195 to 285. So those upper weight classes will be harder to fill. I don't know if you stick with the same weight classes, or maybe you go to like a 95 pounds, 98 pound type weight class to maybe get some more of those girls in the lineup. But so I'll have to figure that out. But either way, it's not there for a dual team, but we have the numbers for a girls' state tournament. I just don't know how successful we're going to be with these two associations getting something done here in the meantime. I mean, like I said, 2 years is what we should probably be expecting, and I guess we have to deal with what we got, Ross.
I find that crazy that we're the only state that has a boys and a girls, a union or whatever, athletic association.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind because, growing up in Iowa, it's not something we probably really had second thoughts about, right? I mean, you never really thought about,
No.
Well, Illinois probably has the same thing. I mean, you would never think different. So the fact that was pointed out to you yesterday, I wanted to bring that up too, because I'm like, that is kind of like mind blowing that out of every state, we're the only one. That is incredibly frustrating.
I knew that there wasn't a lot, but then when KJ said that we're the only one, I was like, whoa, really? That's sad, I think. I mean, how the hell did it even start? Like, that's what I would like to know.
Right, yeah. So obviously it's going to be tough to have two things work together. Everybody's got to be happy, so everyone's got to get satisfied. So it's going to be some work to it, but like you said, there's some huge numbers supporting this right now. So we just got to capitalize on our momentum, I think.
Well, I'm going to try to, here in the coming weeks, I'm going to try to get someone on from, that's more in the know, I guess, behind the scenes. And we will try to get them on the show just to kind of get some numbers for us. And but I'll be working on that. Anyway, so let's move on to the thing that we always, high school season's around the corner, right? Classifications are out. My first reaction to them was 2A coming down from 3A. So first, they went to 3A last year, and now they're going back to 2A. I think that bodes well for them, obviously, right? I mean, they were able to finish 10th in 3A last year. And
you're talking about Perry?
Perry, yeah.
Yep.
So Perry coming down, I think that's obviously one of the biggest moves for Class 2A to see Perry in there.
Yeah, I can't. I'd be interested to know. Didn't Perry Wrestling tweet at your congrats to them? Didn't they say they have 3 place winners coming back? Does that sound right? Or what? I thought they said something to you.
They got Olin Zach.
Yeah. That's the only big name I could think off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, I mean, yeah, that'll make them a strong team in the 2A, which that ended up being a pretty good race last year, right? I mean, I think we knew Wahlert was going to be pretty good, but I don't think we really saw, I mean, with New Hampton's depth or, just any of those teams, I really didn't think, Wahlert, even though they had big guns, I didn't think they'd have the team to pull it off, and they kind of showed me wrong, so.
So we're going to try to get some articles up here in the coming weeks, just to kind of dive more into, the ramifications, if there's matchups now that aren't going to be happening that we were expecting to see, how that kind of changes 3A, 2A, and 1A, and then in the coming weeks. So be on the lookout for that. But big weekend coming up for Iowa, recruiting wise. Are you getting any closer to putting a finger on these? Are you going to release these little nuggets yet, or are you going to hold out on us?
I'm hoping to have. I'd like to do all 8 names, because we're pretty sure 8 guys are going to be on campus. I mean, I guess that number could have gone up from what we knew a week ago, but sounds like 8 people are coming to town. I'd like to get all the names before we release them. Maybe we'll put a post up next week. But I thought it was interesting that, Iowa announced that the Wisconsin game's going to be, it's going to be a night game. So obviously that's going to be, night games at Kinnick can be really fun, even though the team is, supposed to be better than Iowa. I've had a pretty enjoyable experience, even though I'm like, Iowa's going to get their butt handed to them, but this will be fun to go to. So, that's obviously that could have a pull on a recruit being there and seeing that. And, the wrestling team usually gets they get a red carpet. Tom Brand spoke at the Iowa State game, I think, at one of the quarter breaks they interviewed him. So, the wrestling team definitely gets a lot of attention. So those guys coming on campus, that could be a pretty big deal for them to be recognized.
Yeah. Any night game is pretty damn sick at Kinnick, right? And they're going to get the whole day experience. I'm not sure, they're probably not going to be tailgating, right? But I'm guessing that they're going to probably mingle. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of a tailgate set up to where they can go out and, check things out. Obviously they'll have practice that morning where they can see that and see all the fans. I guess that would maybe be the only downside, that maybe they wouldn't have as much fans for the HWC practice in the morning. So maybe they'll push it back, to like 11 o'clock or something. Who knows? But
practice is at noon tomorrow with the UNI game.
Yeah, so I think they'll obviously push it back. And I've been seeing some pictures of that room, and there's a lot of people in those rooms as always. But it seems like there's a little bit more this year. But you need to pop your head in there.
I do. I wish I was going down this weekend, but especially since alma mater, UNI playing. But I'm in a wedding this weekend, Tony. So I'm also disappointed that I'm just not lining up with my schedule here.
What is the deal with people getting married on Iowa football games and Iowa State football games? I had a wedding too. I had a wedding too on a football game.
The Iowa State one is the biggest egregious one, because that's like the biggest rivalry in state. So I do not like having weddings to go to on that weekend. But no, I'm also a little disappointed that I won't get to see. What was it? Was it the last time you and I played Iowa? Was that the?
That's like I know what you're thinking about, like the block kick.
I was just gonna say the infamous, yeah.
That's like the only game that I ever remember, so I'm just gonna assume that was the last one.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, oh man, I think back.
And you went to school there.
Yeah, I know. That's terrible, isn't it? Holy cow.
I couldn't tell you a single Simpson college football score for the last 20 years. So.
Well, for a while though, the Big Ten said no FCS schools. So even though that rule was still getting broken, but I know for a while there it was like, no, not going to happen. So either way. Hey, and by the way, I want to pat myself on the back for being right. 10 points Iowa over Iowa State. I nailed that one.
Good call. So, I can't remember what my guess was. I said 3.
You said 3. So yeah.
You should have put some money on the game.
I was gonna say, come to my gambling corner. Apparently,
you got the hot. You're sharp. Okay. Anything else we've got for this week?
I don't think so. Like I said, hopefully we'll have more info on Iowa's big weekend. I'm not sure what else is coming down the pike. All the schedules are out, so maybe Nick and I will take a dive into some of the big matchups for the teams this coming season. But we'll just we'll roll from there.
Perfect. as always, thanks for listening. Appreciate listening to Potentially Dangerous. We'll be back next week. Hopefully there's some breaking news, some recruiting news with some of these guys on campus, and sounds like Ross will have some more nuggets for you. So make sure you subscribe, listen to Potentially Dangerous.